Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. What's going on, guys? Now, with the Kell Brook Errol Spence fight coming up, I'm very excited for it. And I don't really do this often. I really only do this for the fights that I get really excited for. Um, Wanted to do just basically a video for each fighter because a lot of people are saying bring your bias towards Kell Brook because you're a big fan of Kell Brook. But I want to do one for each fighter. I'm gonna be objective about it. Um, in this video right here, it's going to be why and what Errol Spence can do to defeat Kell Brook. So we'll start from the Errol Spence side of things. Errol Spence, obviously, big welterweight just like Kell Brook, hard puncher just like Kell Brook. But one thing that he has that Kell Brook doesn't have is that Olympic background, that Olympic experience. Now, I think it's fair to say for anybody who's not, who's not biased or who's not, just on Errol Spence's jock, that Errol Spence Jr. and the 2012 Olympic boxing team, which also featured, I believe, Marcus Brown and Jamel Herring, I'm going to say, that nobody really meddled at them. I'm pretty sure you got to say it's probably, if not the worst USA boxing team, it's definitely in the top two or three because really, just the fact that we didn't medal and nobody even got to the gold medal match, it's not a good look. So regardless of the fact of that he probably was on the worst and got further, I'm pretty sure he got further than everybody else, I believe, in the Olympic Games. And it probably is one of the worst Olympic boxing teams in American history. He's still an Olympian, and that experience does count for something in boxing because what the Olympics teaches you is because amateur boxing is different than pro boxing. It's really more it's more about scoring points and not really as much. There's not as much emphasis as hurting your opponent, but it does teach you a couple of things that Errol Spence does have in his toolbox. It teaches you punch placement. It teaches you how to have proper mechanics. It teaches you, to always be in shape, especially with the amateur experience he has. Because in the amateurs you don't pick who you fight. You gotta always be on weight, and you just in a tournament you fight whoever wins. So that's what it is, and I think the amateur experience could really help Errol Spence in this fight. Now, aside from his amateur experience, from more tangible things, one thing Errol Spence also has going for him is the fact that Kell Brook, well, not necessarily Kell Brook, but that the one thing he has going for him is that he is the best body puncher in the weight class. And I say that in probably every Errol Spence video I've made over the last 2 years, that he's the best body puncher in the weight class. Now, it's gonna be a bit of a challenge to get that body work off on Kell Brook, depending on how he fights. Now, if Kell Brook sits there and decides to trade with Errol Spence, then that plays right into his hands. But if Kell Brook fights the way he needs to fight to win this fight, which is being mobile and actually using his feet and setting traps with his feet, then the task of actually landing hard body shots on Kell Brook becomes increasingly harder for Errol Spence, because in order to do that, you need time to plant your feet, and that gives your opponent time to get out of the way or maybe alleviate some of the shots and pick it off. And so it's going to be a bit of a challenge for Errol Spence to get that body work off on Kell Brook if he is mobile. But I think the body punching is what he has going for him. And I'll say this too, composure. I think what we need to learn, I think one underrated element of this fight that people really aren't talking about, or one from the mental standpoint, two underrated elements of this fight that people really aren't talking about are simply that composure. We don't really know about the composure of Errol Spence because his composure really hasn't been tested. He's been fighting, guys who are either on a couple days' notice, a week's notice, or 140 pounders that blew up the 147 that he could just beat the crap out of and look good against. He hasn't really had that test, so we don't really know what his composure is like. Now we can make assumptions and say, well, based on his demeanor and how he carries himself, that you would be led to believe that Errol Spence has composure, especially being that he was an Olympian. But we don't know on the pro level what his composure is like yet, so we'll find out on this fight. But on the Kell Brook side of things, in terms of composure, sometimes he has shown in a couple of his fights, against Gennady Golovkin, he sat there in the middle of the ring, trading punches with him, and that's not what that was never how he was going to beat Golovkin. And while it did excite me, and I was sitting there screaming at my TV going for Kell Brook to beat Golovkin, it was never really going to win him that fight. And just that fight, and I've seen a couple instances where he shouldn't have been so close to Sean Porter, and he allowed Sean Porter to get into that fight. So I think mental discipline and composure. I think Errol Spence, if he is, people say he is, and he's the truth, then he might have an edge in that category, and that could go that as we know in boxing, if you box or have been in the ring, mental composure and mental discipline as far as executing your game plan, that's everything in boxing. So that might be where he has the edge. And overall, I think the fact that that this is a guy who just really believes in himself. And I know this is all corny what I'm saying, but Errol Spence is a talented fighter. He's a really, really talented fighter, and he can take confidence in the fact that in Kell Brook's career, one thing I also say too, if you're from the Errol Spence side of things, they brought this up already, but like early in Kell Brook's career, because he didn't have a long amateur career, he learned on the job a lot. He really didn't fight the level of opposition Errol Spence fought. He did a lot worse. So I think he can be confident in the fact that knowing that Kell Brook had to cut weight for this fight. That while he does look good, it's one thing to look good when you're on the scale, but it's another thing to look good after Errol Spence hits you with a body shot. So I think from a mental standpoint, Errol Spence could have a slight advantage in this fight just from his side of things. But he still has to go to the UK and go to Bramall Lane in Kell Brook's backyard. But what he has to do to Kell Brook to beat him, specifically from a boxing standpoint, is when you watch Errol Spence fight, right? He fights, he's a southpaw, I'm a southpaw. He fights, and there's not really a whole lot of upper body movement. Like, you're not seeing him like move his head and slip a lot of shots. He's more about getting the spacing, stepping back, and kind of picking the shot off with his hands, or just getting out of range altogether. So there's not a whole lot of upper body movement. So for Errol Spence, I think for him, he's never moved his head a lot ever in his career, and I don't think in one fight that's going to change. So for him, I think when you say establish your jab with Errol Spence, it's a little different than most times, because to be honest, I got to be honest, Errol Spence doesn't have a great jab. He has a jab that he uses particularly as rangefinder, and it gets him in those it gets him into that distance to cut that distance and then work to the body. That's what his jab is for. It's more that his jab. When I watch Errol Spence fight, his jab is more of a decoy. His jab is more of like a rangefinder. He doesn't really throw it all the time to land. He throws it to either set up the left hand or gain clean entry to cut distance and then work to the body. So for him, it's about making sure that when you throw that jab and when you actually are using that jab to find the range on Kell Brook, that you're not lined up for one of those straight right hands, that you have a great understanding of distance and that you don't drop that left hand for a second. So if you jab him, that hand better be able to catch it, because if it's not there, you will get clipped with something. And you don't want that if you're Errol Spence. Now, where he also, I think, has an advantage in this fight is the fact that, and I know this is corny to say, but he's never lost. And I think, I can't remember which trainer said this, but it was Customato. I don't know if it was Customato or George Bennett, but it was like one of those old trainers from back in the day. They said that it's like 20 or 5% harder to beat a fighter when he has no losses on his record. And while Kell Brook never lost a welterweight, he did take a beating to Golovkin, and that could have an effect on him. So if you're Errol Spence, you know that. I think for him, it's just about really sticking to what's gotten you all this hype in the first place, which is attacking the body. We know that the Kell Brook eye socket did have surgery, and that Golovkin did do some damage to that orbital bone, but he needs to make sure that he's not targeting that the whole night and that he invests in the body. Beat Errol Spence, and you give yourself your best chance to win this fight. And that's my perspective on what Errol Spence has to do in this fight and what he can do in this fight. So let me know what you guys think about what I said. Add anything you want in the comments down below. Take the time to subscribe. You can love me or you can hate me, but I'm just a kid from Daniel. So until next time, take care, guys.